That's pretty good
The sparks are slightly different color. That's
Would you like me to get a shot in here?
Don Smith. That's one of these the tuning process needs much bigger systems than what he's wanting to do. All this in the cars, they tell them all built usually, but you come out How many milliwatts is this putting out? Did you say? How many milliwatts is this putting out? We own the right to do it.
I'm going to go over this all again for everybody.
Good. Thank you.
Looks like you have copper on one side and aluminum on the other side.
All job and good job. I'm thinking about building another electric car for me. I want to be able to.
Well, how are you doing?
Right now we got it.
Doing okay?
Oh, yeah. Some good footage. Hard to understand you when there's so many people talking.
Come closer.
It's hard to understand you when there's so many people talking.
I'm going to go over this thing a second time, since people have been able to see it and explain it all over again.
It's possible to plug just to
Make it reverse if it doesn't matter. The welding glass, the energy doesn't pass from one side to the
But no,
other.
it's all right. We're surviving.
because they screw the
It's very neat and very simple.
But could we, and as it stands there today, how the device where I say it has to be posted, if I have it,
Okay, thank you greatly, and I think at this point, let's see if I can get there.
If you have a question, rather than sitting down here, because we can't pick it up on the,
One at a time.
come up here and talk to the microphone.
Come up where I can hear you, because I have a hearing problem, And if individually you come and stand with me here, I'll try to answer your questions. So let's kind of draw straws here and see who gets to ask the first question. Come now, I know there's a lot of questions.
I guess the first one that walks up there gets to ask.
The first one comes, gets to ask the first question. Thank you very much for coming, and what would be your question?
Well, you had like 200 some odd devices that you made there. Where can I buy one?
Actually, these have all been for my own personal entertainment more than anything else. And I spent several million dollars of my own money playing with these things over a long period of time. And a surprising number of them have over Unity type characteristics. We want to ask another question?
You haven't answered that. Where can I buy one?
I just told you that they're not ready for sale. I've occasionally made the mistake of selling one of them, and the people that get them, you can see that it's out in the open. There's nothing concealed. It's very easy to understand, and there's no reason to destruct the device that, say, the person gets. And I've tried selling a few, and I found out that what happened to this, the person got it and tried to tear it up and see why it worked, and they could see that without tearing it up. And the moment that happens, they want their money back, and I tell them that if that's the case, please put it back like it was, and I'll give you your money back.
Where can we get directions to build one?
Actually, you can figure it out yourself. I've actually told you basically what you need to know.
A long way from a schematic.
Okay.
Well, you know, if I could interject real quick, I just want to interject real quick. It comes up all the time. Please tell us exactly how to do this, step by step and piece by piece. But there's a problem with that. My father is trying to partner with industry partners to construct devices like this. They don't like it when he comes and does these conventions. And they talk about, well, what are you going to say? How much are you going to give away? Because the reality is, if he stands up here and gives a workshop and says, now take coil A and insert it into slot B, those industry partners will disappear like mist. And people then say, well, where can I go to buy these things? Well, the reality is, most of the industry partners, in fact, all of them to this point, that have partnered with my father, and he developed something for them, and they take it in-house, they're not turning around and selling Don Smith Technologies over Unity devices. A friend of mine, who is in fact a CEO of one of these companies, who actually develops filament technologies for light bulbs, once told me, you can't make me stab my company in the chest. I might have a 90-year light bulb. I'm going to sell you a 25-year light bulb until the market's saturated. Then I'll sell you a 30-year light bulb. Saturation can take 15 to 20 years. So the reality is, they take his device, they improve an existing process, and you might see a new whatever, widget X, come out that's 10% more efficient than it was a year ago. That may be based on things my father has done, but you will not see widget X that will power itself forever. So my father is trapped between two worlds. He needs industry partners to take his devices worldwide and to try to make an impact. By the same token, he'd like to just unleash this to everyone, to the world. So he comes and says as much as he can at these conventions, so that those of you who want to try to follow along with this and do this on your own can pick up from what he's talking about. But don't ever expect him to give you the whole 9 yards, because even if he wanted to, I wouldn't let him. Because the reality is, we've had enough people come to the table at our house and try to steal his intellectual property. And I'm sick of that. And to be frank, after he had his heart attack and his stroke that left him half paralyzed, I offered to move him with my money if he wouldn't use his money to New Zealand, to the country. Stop doing this. It's too much of a headache. But he's still here and he's still presenting to you guys because he would like to see the world benefit from what he's doing and it not just become a closet technology that someone sits on.
Well said.
There's my piece.
Okay, Dennis, let's take your question.
In device 9, you used an acrylic plastic sheet
Yes.
and a powdered metal shielding.
The powdered metals come in molding metal projects today. Most of the metal molds are made from powdered metal. And how they accomplish that, they have a cylinder which is under pressure and they heat it up, and when the pressure is a certain level, the particles all are dispersed like powder, and they cool it down in that state, so they end up with powdered metals in any quantity you want. And if you want to build a solid device, you take this powder, put it in a mold, and you center it. You bring it up to the point where the metal begins to, where it touches, begins to grab onto each other, and you have a solid device.
Oh, so
any shape.
Was this out of a spray can?
Out of a spray can?
Yeah. What did you get the powder? What is the name of
No,
the powder?
no. When you get the metal, it's already been made into powder. The companies, this large industry where they supply unlimited quantities of all kinds of metals, rare and unusual, and everything.
What type of
else.
metal was that?
What kind was it?
Yeah.
Well, just let me say it's something that electricity doesn't, magnetic flux doesn't like.
Okay. That airplane capacitor at 400 farads, what voltage was that rated at?
What voltage for the capacitor rated at?
400.
It usually is 24 volts or something like that.
How did you reduce the output of the Tesla coil to be able to accommodate only 24 volts?
Well, actually, what we're seeing here is an extreme case of what happens when you do this. You can do it to all voltage levels. So a 24 volt output at say 200 amps or something is quite accessible, because the amps don't show up until you do the grounding thing. If it's a dead ground, you don't have anything left. If you ground it properly, you can bring the amount of amps and volts in that you want. You can custom make it.
In the plasma tube device, you said the copper and aluminum plates are in the frequency range of a diode bridge.
Well, the frequency range will be whatever the plasma tube itself is putting out, which is from, say, 20,000 volts. 20 to 40,000 volts, for example.
You mean hertz? You mean cycles?
Frequency will also be about 15 to 20,000 cycles per second.
Because your diodes are rated for about 25 kilohertz?
Well, they go into megahertz.
Power diodes.
But you don't have to, if you pick your battles so you can win them, you try to make the energy source in a level which is easily accessible to the off-the-shelf diodes.
Right. That the toroid is military surplus material. Is there a name for that?
The nickel material.
Yeah, the nickel something alloy.
It's a nickel iron alloy. And there's a name for it, but I can't think of it at the moment.
Okay, and the last question is on the Coke machine. You have a diode device that's on the output of the first set of capacitors. And could you specify a little bit more on what that is?
Say again, please.
Could you specify a little bit more of what that diode device on the output of the...
Well, any diode bridge type thing will set it up so that it'll work.
Oh, so it's pulsing DC and it goes into the toroid.
Yeah,
That smooths it out.
We're using pulsing DC when it comes through the toroid there, and when it goes through the toroid, it smooths out the thing so that it comes out almost perfect sine wave, which is a very simplified version of an inverter. Inverters are hardly complex, but they don't have to be. They can be hardly simple. And that's what I've done. I've simplified the inverter so that it has very few pieces, and you can see the Coke machine is running beautifully. So it must work.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We need someone else?
I just wanted to add a comment here to
Okay.
you, and that is that in your present model of getting this technology out, this assumes that it's business as usual on the planet. If you read about the peak oil issue, for example, that there may be not very much time, several years, 5 years.
It's a lot less than that. I'm an authority on oil worldwide. My background is a petroleum engineer, among
Have
other things.
you? So you must be following the peak oil issue.
I'm very familiar with
Okay,
it.
so-
I know exactly what's going on, and it's a lot sooner than you think. It's about a year and a half from now.
Well, I'm gonna quote Tom Bearden. Most people know about Tom Bearden here, but I ran a briefing for the United States Senate, senator from our state here,
Okay.
a few years ago in Washington, and Tom Bearden was one of the people I had there. At that time, which was the year 2000, Tom made the comment that if we aren't making these devices, anybody knows Tom knows that he's kind of colloquial from Louisiana. He said, if we aren't making these little things like sausages out of a machine by the first quarter of 2004, we might as well go home and go fishing because it was too late.
It's
That was
very true.
and that was his assessment, 5 years ago about where we should be. And right now we ain't making them.
We're there.
We're there, and we aren't making them like little sausages. So
What's going to happen here? We're going to have when you disrupt the system for food and energy and that sort of thing, you basically turn the world back to the 1800s.
yep.
And you've done it overnight. So what's going to happen? You're going to have hundreds of millions of people starving to death, killing each other for food and all types of things like that. And take my word for it. I know exactly what I'm talking about. We're about a year and a half from that happening.
That's what I've read too.
And I'm very much, very knowledgeable on the subject, and if anybody wants to debate it, I can handle myself quite well. Yes, sir.
Okay, well, I don't want to debate it for a minute, but what I do want to do is pose something for us to think about. Here we are talking together about the existence of abundance for all of humanity being a possibility. But we're living in a social climate of fear, power and control, domination, and violence.
Very true.
We, by changing the way we're thinking and helping each other to get to abundance for everyone, can change. How do we do that?
Unfortunately, human nature is constructed in such a way that it's going to be very difficult. And although I think what I'm doing is for the benefit of humanity in the long run, it's going to be very difficult to implement. But my connections to China and Russia are well on the way right now.
Okay.
So the real thing is already beginning to happen. And I'm considered a national treasure in China, and also the Russian, or the intellectual part of the Russian.
The academic side.
Well, that sounds good. Let's hope that there are people here who may be connected to the mainstream institutions will understand that the U.S. will become a backwater unless we approach this technology.
That's my plan. I intended for it to be deliberately because I tried so hard to give it to the energy department and the other people. I spent an enormous amount of money over a long period of time with the energy department thumbing their nose at me. And so I decided myself that the United States was going to become a third world country.
Okay, what a shame.
That was my comeuppance for the fact that they had snubbed me on the way.
Wow. Okay. I hope we can do better.
Well, he's here presenting.
Yeah, thanks.
Just had a quick question. I noticed you have brochures, handouts for scooters and airplanes.
Okay,
Are those companies that you would allow us to buy from?
say again, please.
Are those companies that you would allow us to buy from? In other words, if you apparently have your own
I'm not the absolute source of it, so.
Well, you'd have to contact the company
Yeah.
that we've dealt with and see if they would be willing to sell you
Right.
what he sold them, which
Exactly.
they almost certainly wouldn't, but.
it fits in their
Right.
design.
It's
So
just-
they're selling them.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're restricted to only selling the
To
specific.
where?
Like if it's a part for a plane,
Right.
they can put it in their plane.
Right, okay, so
Yeah.
they're selling their planes to who?
Let me tell you about the
Whoever wants to buy
airplane,
it.
for
But
example.
it's not gonna have, like I say, it's gonna have an efficient, it is unlikely, but it's up to them, whether they'll put his full device on the plane or not.
Got it.
Let me tell you how the airplane came about. In the old days, there was an air show about a little over 2 years ago, and the device was presented there, and the Chinese government happened to be present. And they led a contract for 24 twin-engine commuter aircrafts using that system on the spot.